Redemption, Lesson 6, the progression of redemption. Now, at this stage, there's another aspect of redemption that we must look at before we go on to its fulfillment. We could have gone on and just gone on to the fulfillment in Christ, but there's such good stuff about redemption here that we need to not miss. And even though this might seem sort of a drag to most people, we're going to look at the law and the matter of the redemption of possessions, right? The principle is written into the law and it has several aspects to it. And most people, when they come to it, just skip over it and say, what's all this all about? And never really look into it. But we'll just briefly look into it today. The principles written into the law. And so it had to do with land, right? The redemption of land. It had to do with general possessions, anything at all, and redemption. It has also to do with people and redemption of people. And it has to do with inheritance. And that's a very important part of it to the Jewish people. And so let's just look at them in order. We'll look at the land first and see what they are about, and then let us see a wonderful example of this Levitical form of redemption in practice. Now, I say Levitical because it comes under the Levitical law. We find them in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and like I say, most people when they come to Leviticus and Deuteronomy say, oh dear, this is a hard grind, a lot of repetition, I don't know that I can bother with this. And so they skip over these books and they miss the very foundation of the doctrines. Remember, Christ says in Matthew 5:17 and 18 that he's come to fulfill the law in every jot and tittle, and this is part of the law, and a very, very important part of the law too. And this is the basis for our belief of redemption, that Christ redeems us. And so we're going to look at it. I think you'll find it's not nearly such a drag as you think it might be. Leviticus 25 takes this up, and we'll turn to Leviticus 25 and look at it. And there'll be a lot of Bible reading, and we'll just follow through, and you have your Bible and just follow me through. Verses 1 to 7 tells us that the land is God's, and he's given it to Israel. But we'll read it. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed. For it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth among thee, or with thee, and for thy cattle, and for the beasts that are in thy land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. So there was to be a Sabbath of the land. And verse 8 to 17 goes on, and it talks about this matter of redemption. It says, And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years. That's 49 years. 7 times 7 years. And in the space of the 7th Sabbath of years shall be unto thee 49 years. And then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month In the day of atonement, we know the day of atonement, shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, nor the reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed. For it is the jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this jubilee ye shall return every man to his possession. And if they sell aught unto thy neighbour, or buyest aught of thy neighbour's hand, ye shall not oppress one another. All right. So it tells us that the land is God's, and he has given it to Israel. And it's given to each tribe and to each family. When they came in and they conquered the land of Israel, and they divided it up into tribes, and each tribe got a different portion of the land, and then each family within each tribe was allocated a portion of land, a farm if you like. Some had small acreage, some had big acreage. It depends on the quality of the land, but it was divided up, and each family was allocated a portion of land. And when they were allocated their portion of land, they put rocks, mostly rocks, at each corner of their portion. And they were warned against moving the landmarks, right? They were warned against moving the rocks and stealing their neighbour's land. And so it was a very, very important thing for them. Once it had been allotted to a family, it belongs to that family perpetually. That's what God said, perpetually, forever. It still belongs to those families today. And one day, when the Lord returns and we come out into the millennium, that land will be divided up again to the very families that it was given to back in the time of Moses. So verse 8 to 17 tells us of the year of the Jubilee, the 50th year, when any land that had been sold reverts back to its original family of ownership, right? So no matter what happens, every 50 years, the land will always be back in the ownership of its original family. This was God's plan for the nation, but this was perpetual, generation after generation after generation. It was passed on from father to eldest son, and it was very important that that's how it was. In between this 50-year period, a family can sell their land, and if possible, they can pay an already agreed redemption price and buy it back. But usually they sell it because they're poor, and if they're too poor to buy it back, then a kinsman can redeem it for them. Now that's a relative, a near relative, an uncle, a cousin, whatever, a brother, starting from the closest relative and then to the next and the next, etc. And so that's the redemption of land, a very important part. Then Leviticus 25:25, it says, if thy brother be waxen poor and hath sold away some of his possessions, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. And if the man have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus unto the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possession. Now this is speaking mostly of land, and to the Jews the land is the most important thing. But it also did apply to other things, anything, even down to the clothes a man wore or the blankets off his bed, the shirt off his back, we would say, and even that, any possession could be given or promised as security for some reason. And this is where our pawning system came from. Like we have pawn shops in Australia, all in the Western world, full of them. And it's a massive business now. An item is pawned, and if possible, it is later redeemed for a stipulated price. Under the Jewish law, this was an established and acceptable system. And indeed, it's the Jews who really put this system in place for the whole world. And so they could pawn anything. Quite often they would be poor, and the only thing they could pawn would be the blankets off their bed. And God warned people that if they took that sort of thing as surety for their money, they were to give it back before nightfall, so that the person would be able to at least be warm at night. But the idea of pawning things and redeeming them was an integral part of the law right from the start, and an established and acceptable system that was used right through history, right through Jewish history, still is, and indeed it's right through the Western world. Then there was the redemption of people. Leviticus 25:39 to 55. 25:39 to 55. But we'll see how we go. And if thy brother that dwelleth with thee be waxen poor, and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant, that's as a slave, but as an hired servant, and as a sojourner he shall be with thee, and shall serve thee unto the year of the Jubilee. So he will be a hired servant. You'll hire him, and you'll pay him wages for what he does. He won't be a slave. And then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with him, and shall return unto his own family, and to the possession of his fathers shall he return. For they are my servants, this is Israel, which are brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondsmen, not as slaves. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigour. That's what the Pharaoh did to them in Egypt. But shalt fear thy God. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids which thou shalt have, that slaves, shall be as the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land. And they shall be your possession, and ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule over one another with rigour. And if a sojourner or stranger wax rich by thee, and thy brother that dwelleth by him wax poor, and sell himself unto the stranger or sojourner by thee, or to the stock of the stranger's family, after that he is sold, he may be redeemed again. One of his brethren may redeem him, either his uncle or his uncle's son, that's his cousin, may redeem him, or any that is nigh of kin unto him of his family may redeem him, or if he is able, he may redeem himself. And he shall reckon with him that bought him from the year that he was sold unto the year of the Jubilee, the 50th year. And the price of his sale shall be according to the number of years, according to the time of an hired servant shall he be with him. If there be yet many years behind, according unto them, he shall give again the price of his redemption out of the money that he was bought for. And if there remain but few years unto the year of Jubilee, then he shall count with him, and according unto the years shall he give him again the price of his redemption. As a yearly hired servant shall he be with him, and the other shall not rule with rigour over him in thy sight. And if he be not redeemed in these years, then he shall go out in the year of the Jubilee, both he and his children with him. For unto me the children of Israel are servants, they are my servants, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So, a person for some reason could become so poor that he sold his possessions and his land and finally sold himself into bondage. Sometimes he could manage to redeem himself by the work that he did, but usually he had to be a bond slave until the year of the Jubilee. Now, if he sold himself to a stranger, he was actually a slave. But if he sold himself to another one of the children of Israel, he became a hired servant and worked for him, but he was paid wages. Under the law, one of his brethren could redeem him. Verses 48 and 49 tell us, after that he is sold, he may be redeemed again. One of his brethren may redeem him. Either his uncle or his uncle's son, his cousin may redeem him, or any that is not of kin unto him of his family may redeem him. Or he can, if he's able, he can redeem himself. So that's the redemption of people. So we've looked at the redemption of land, and we've looked at the redemption of possessions, and we've looked at the redemption of people. But now we go on, and we're going to look at the redemption of inheritance. And this is very important. Each of these aspects of redemption was considered very important by the Jews, but the inheritance was the most important. The system was that the land always belonged to the same family. Now we've talked about that. The basic inheritance was passed from the father to the eldest son and was the birthright. The law was very specific about this, and this system and principle was a cornerstone of the society and social structure of the Jews. Now what happened is each family had their land, and it was marked out, and that was their basic inheritance. That was the most important thing to them. And it was passed from the father to the eldest son, right? And so he got the land, and he also was given a double portion of anything else there was to inherit. So if you were the eldest son in the family, you were a very eligible bachelor. The girls would be looking at you if you were an eldest son, because you were the one that would inherit the land, and you would get a double portion. Second or third or fourth or fifth brother, they were down the line. They got what they got, but the eldest son was the centre of the society, and so it was the whole of the system revolved around this, and it was very important to a man that he had a son, an eldest son. Because this matter was so important, the law covered all the things that could possibly affect it, and there's a lot of things that can affect it. For instance, if a man had no sons, then his inheritance went to his daughters, to his eldest daughter first. Right, and so you say, oh, well, that disannuls it straight away. Well, no, it doesn't. Because she then took on this position of inheriting the land, these daughters who inherited the land could then only marry within their own tribe. And then the inheritance passed from father to son again, perpetuating the girl's father's line. So the girl's father hands the land on to her, but she can't just marry anybody from any tribe. She must then marry within her own tribe. And the man that she marries takes the place of a firstborn son, and if they then have a son, that their firstborn son takes on the inheritance and keeps up the line of the girl's father's family as if it was never broken. All right, so that's covered. If a man had a son and his son died without children, you say, oh, well, that mucks up the system. Well, no. Under the law, the next son, the second son, was to have children to the first son's wife, right, to take the place of the firstborn son who died. These children would then belong to the firstborn son, even though he's dead, and perpetuate his family and his inheritance. The second son would have all the responsibilities and costs, etc., but everything would be credited to his dead brother. Now you say, but he would get the land. Well, no, he never gets ownership of it. The wife owns it and he works it. He doesn't own it. Every benefit that comes from it, the profit and everything, goes to the wife. She has a child to him, and that child then becomes the son of his elder brother, and the line is perpetuated without a break. So we see the role